A Distinct Success as a Bird, a podcast about Baltimore Orioles and their songs, hosted by me, Peter Olkers. Episode 5, Oriole Philology. A few months ago, I promised an episode on the Oriole songs of the east side of the Charles River Peninsula. Well, a full season of birdsong has passed, and I'm finally ready. Oh boy, am I ready. Before I begin, let me explain the title. When I was in college, I took classical Greek as my required language, and one of the first things you learn as a Greek student is that there's more than one classical Greek. There's an old academic discipline called philology that's largely responsible for tracing the history of the transformations in the language, and they're often based on tiny fragments of otherwise unreadable documents. How does this relate to birds? Well, one of the first uses of spectrogram technology in ornithology was to study bird dialects. Field recordings, which are so dependent on recording conditions and a bird's willingness to sing, are a lot like the fragments peered over by Greek scholars. And if you record long enough at a single location, you can trace continuities and transformations in the bird songs there. I have enough respect for the scientific method not to call myself an ornithologist. Philologist fits better. What I'm interested in is much more specific and interpretive. The history of Baltimore Oriole songs at the Charles River Peninsula, based on what are often hopelessly noisy, incomplete records. It's very hard to do this kind of work by ear alone. It's also not ideal for podcasts. So what I'll do for this episode, and I promise to do for other episodes in the series, is to run the whole thing through Raven Lite and use screen capture to create a video that I can post on YouTube. This should give you access to spectrograms and means I don't have to create a whole separate document combining text and images. I'll add that one of the delights of studying Baltimore Oriole songs is how much their spectrograms resemble human writing in their clarity and distinctiveness. So I hope you take advantage of the videos. Okay, time to start the episode. I'll start with a clip recorded on April 30th of this year. The Baltimore Oriole singing season started very early in 2025, so this is already BOR 05. I nicknamed him the Poet for reasons I'll explain in a bit. He was singing in the woods on the west side of the property. Careful listeners to previous episodes might guess why I chose to highlight this bird. There were three main song types at the Charles River Peninsula in 2025. Each shared by several individuals. This bird sang all three song types. But he didn't just sing them as three discrete parts of his repertoire. He combined them, spinning hybrid forms, adding short song notes in wrong places, and then singing full correct versions of the songs at other times. I suspect this Oriole was the bird I named Lord Westwoodton in 2024. He had to have been a veteran bird to know these songs, and have spent some time on the east side of the property, as that bird was known to do. I can't explain why he was singing this way. I used to regard the Orioles with highly original songs as poets, but now I see Oriole poetry as more deeply involved in cultural history, the way folks in Lit-Crit talk about intertextuality. At any rate, this one bird provides us with a primer for the three main song types at the Charles River Peninsula. He sang the West Side Trestle Song, shared with a community of birds upstream of the peninsula, which we heard a lot of in episodes 2 and 3. I'll refer to this as song type 3. He sang the Upper East Side Red-Winged Bay Song, which I will refer to as song type 2. This song got some action, systematically stimulating a response from another bird, possibly female, though I didn't see it. And he sang some distinctive syllables of the Lower East Side Point Song, which I will refer to as song type 1, though I didn't capture him singing that song in isolation, only in hybrid forms. Both song type 1 and song type 2 are forms that split from an earlier song, which, for the purposes of this episode, I'll refer to as song type alpha. It's the history of that earlier song and the way that it split that is the focus of this episode. Incidentally, BAOR 05, the poet, sang in this expansive hybrid way for about a week, but then appears to have vanished into just one of his songs, probably song type 3, which he had sung the previous 2 years. In 2022, I recorded an interesting bout of countersinging between two birds with similar songs. A clip of this exchange was included in episode 1, and I'll repeat a bit of it here. When I went through my records, I discovered two things. One was that the first song, evidently the one being partially copied by the other bird, was in my records since 2016, and versions of it could be found going back even further. The second thing I discovered was that after this recording, both songs effectively vanished. Let's look at the history of this song first. Here it is in 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016. Can I go back even further? Here the overall record becomes spottier, but even in 2014, when I quit going out into the field for a time because of Lyme disease, I have passable ancestors. 2015, 2014, 2013, 2012, 2011, 2010. Now I think the song continuity is less persuasive on its face, but I'm going to push in a different way all the way back to 2008 when I made my first recording of a Baltimore Oriole, back when I didn't even know what species it was. The answer is in the short song. In 2008, I recorded this. In 2009, I captured the same approximate song, but with a difference. The bell-shaped note that ended the song and ended every subsequent version of the song all the way back to 2022 made its first appearance, and there was another syllable used as a short song. This is the very note that BAOR05 in 2025 used as replacement note in some of his Type 3 songs. These short songs seem to be a key source of continuity, maybe even community, in Baltimore Oriole singing at the Charles River Peninsula. They're reliable ways to tell newcomers from old-timers. The bell-shaped note, as we shall see, seems to be hard for some birds to learn. On the other hand, the pip short song associated with song type 3 of the trestle and west side seems to be common among Baltimore Orioles generally, so I'm not sure what conclusions to draw from this discovery. At any rate, this alpha song had a long history at the Charles River Peninsula, and then went extinct, or more accurately was succeeded by two similar song types that split off in specific ways. Let's listen to song type 1. Hopefully, you noticed that this bird, BAOR01, the first Baltimore Oriole recorded in 2025, had two distinct, though similar songs in his repertoire. One song begins, like song type alpha, with two short notes and a note swooping from high to low, and the other skips the two short notes in favor of a big Z-shaped note with a slide whistle quality. This second song, which has its own history in the property, was only heard for about a week in 2025, dropped in favor of the first song. The main difference between song type 1 and the alpha song is the number of notes. Song type 1 merges two discrete notes after the big swoop into a single note and eliminates one of the interior notes. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same. I'll play them back to back a few times. If you can't hear the difference, please check the spectrograms on the video. Now, historically, I've been frustrated in my attempts to record birds singing the Type 1 song because they tend to congregate in a deep woody area on the edge of the river. In 2024, the best way to record them was via kayak. Otherwise, I had to wait until they approached the outer edge of the woods or be content getting faint recordings. I knew there was more than one bird singing this song, but how many were singing it, I didn't know for sure. So in 2025, I decided to be more deliberate. Wearing long boots, I trudged through the brush deep into the woods and hung an audio moth configured to capture the dawn chorus on 3 consecutive days. When I retrieved the device and listened to the recordings, I honestly was shocked. There were not 2, but as many as 4 and possibly more individual Baltimore Orioles singing the song, not counter-singing as much as collectively singing the song, 3 different birds sometimes overlapping at one time. This would last for as long as 20 minutes at a stretch. Watching the spectrogram over time, this is a reminder to watch the video, the consecutive songs look like a cascade of galloping horses or flying dragons. The official ornithological literature says that some neighboring Baltimore Orioles share songs. What I recorded, this cascade of Type 1 songs happened on all 3 days I recorded, seems to be more than sharing, but I promised to stick to the philological facts in front of me, so I will say no more. Now to Type 2 song. If I play Type 1 and Type 2 and Type Alpha, I think you can hear the resemblance, though Type 2 seems to diverge more from Alpha than Type 1. The history of the Type 2 variation is pretty clear. I first recorded it in 2021. This bird had a second song in its repertoire that was so different from its first that I initially thought they were 2 different birds. In retrospect, it appears that the second song, which it eventually dropped from its active repertoire, was probably its original song. The new song it learned from an alpha-type singer. Was its divergence from the original a copying error? This is possible, but it might have had a particular model. In early 2021, there was an alpha-type singer that repeatedly sang the song without its interior notes. From that point on, the Type 2 song has been a fixture at the Charles River Peninsula, shared by several birds at a time. Some birds quickly added it as part of their repertoire, introducing their own variations, as this abbreviated version, consistently omitting an interior note. And several different birds in 2025 arrived with songs that they gradually adjusted over the course of the season to resemble Type 2 or include Type 2 elements. My favorite example was the energetic BAOR 11, who started out with a trill-dominated version of the Type 2 song, but gradually transformed the song into a more conventional Type 2 song, except for the terminal bell note. For that, he used his distinctive triangular short note. There was also the West Side resident, BAOR 15. He started out with a highly distinctive song, but over the course of a week or 2, changed some of his notes at the end of a song into distinctive Type 2 notes. Finally, BAOR 31. This bird was initially a Type 1 singer who sang a version that repeated parts of the song, but sang out of place, on the Upper East Side, closer to the Type 2 zone. The distinguishing feature of this bird's song was its short song. Very different than the local short songs, relatively easy to distinguish by ear, though you can be the judge of that. By the end of the season, this bird had picked up a second song, which it sang in hybrid and discrete versions. This was a second poet bird, singing parts of Type 1 and Type 2 in combination. And so ends the story of Song Type 1 and Song Type 2 at the Charles River Peninsula. For this year, anyway. Song Type 1 seems to be expanding to the south, and Song Type 2 seems to be expanding to the east. But popular songs have been known to go extinct pretty suddenly, so the state of things in 2026 remains to be seen. Meanwhile, what happened to Song Type 3, the song of Lord Trestleton from episodes 2 and 3? Well, I'm happy to report that a male singing the Trestleton song and a female with Lady Trestleton song returned to the Trestle area in 2025 and nested. though this time out of the sight of my camera. This year, instead of kayaking upstream to find more Type 3 singers, I took a walk down a trail upstream of the Charles River Peninsula and planted an audio moth recorder within earshot of the river. As I expected, the Type 3 song continued to dominate the upstream community, and birds continue to offer new interpretations of the theme, as in this version that switches the order of some of the notes. The most interesting variation, which I could hear from the trestle area, but heard better close to the bridge upstream, taught me something about Baltimore Oriole song copying. I had assumed that the initial notes of songs were the ones most likely to be copied, but here was a bird systematically skipping the first two notes of the Type 3 song and just singing the end. This kind of copying did seem to have the desired effect of attracting a mate. It looks like my next job will be to go back over my records to see if I can find other examples of this kind of song copying. There's always more philological work to be done. And that concludes this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. The next episode, we will leave the Charles River Peninsula to examine the wider relationship between Baltimore Oriole song and human music. Please stay tuned.